A workplace bullying environment is a mass unit of psychiatric diseases. It's an ICU, it's an insane asylum, it's a madhouse, it's a circus, it's a zoo, it's a high school, it's an adult daycare, and it's a dysfunctional family. Narcissism in family systems translates eerily well to the workplace. I bet you can see all of the same dynamics, ranging from passive-aggressive door slamming and voice raising to the silent treatment. You may have noticed in your workplace some kind of surrogate father or mother figure that they're all vying for attention from. 3-year-old adult toddlers squabbling for attention from mommy and daddy. A lot of workplace bullying is sibling rivalry. I'm sure you put your best foot forward in the workplace, but workplace bullies don't. They are at their absolute worst in the workplace. They very clearly show the worst side of themselves. If workplace bullies as narcissists think that they are hiding their glaring mommy and daddy issues, they are not doing a very good job. They really put it out there. You can pick up on it the minute that you meet them. You're like, holy crap, this person was raped, molested, beaten, abandoned, neglected, rejected, bullied, abused in some way. These people have a lot of problems, and they drag all of their emotional horseshit into the workplace. And now it's your problem. For some reason that I don't fully understand, workplace bullies have sort of arbitrarily decided that the workplace is an appropriate forum for airing their dirty laundry. It's like a kind of gym or playground for exercising or exorcising trauma, especially their unhealed, unresolved childhood pain. And it doesn't always have to be this big ass deal. It could be severe abuse, like incest, or it could just be that dad didn't show up at their soccer game and they never got over it. It's a cliche at this point that sometimes you are bullied because you remind the bullies of someone, namely the mommy or daddy who hurt them. Even though you may be younger than they are and there is nothing parental about you, they still project their mommy and daddy issues onto you and are trying to work out those issues in a maladaptive and dysfunctional way by abusing, dominating, and eliminating you. But as targets of workplace bullying, sometimes we may need to take a look at how we might be doing exactly the same thing. One of the reasons that workplace bullying hurts so much is that it hits you right on your survival programs. We work for one reason and one reason only, and that's money. And that's because we need money for our literal physical survival. Workplace bullying is a direct threat on your life. When workplace bullies bully you, they might as well put a gun to your head. That's what it feels like. Workplace bullying is an attempted murder. Workplace bullies are murderers in their hearts. Another reason that workplace bullying hurts so much is that it triggers the pre-existing trauma you were already carrying before you ever set foot inside the workplace. Pretty much 99% of the time, workplace bullying is just the usual suspects. You're attractive, you're intelligent, your work is fire, and on top of all of that, you're actually a genuinely nice person, and they just can't handle it. It just makes their little heads explode. You're basically working with a bunch of low vibrational dickheads who are repulsed by your high vibration. If, however, that jealousy thing does not quite sit well with you, if you think that there has to be more to it than that, something deeper going on, especially if this is a chronic, repetitive pattern, it may be time to ask yourself, okay, what about this is familiar? If you are a target of workplace bullying, my guess is you did not come from the healthiest family in the whole entire world. I've interacted with, I think, hundreds of you through this channel, and I think it's safe to say that almost all of you have childhood trauma. There's just something going on there. I'm not saying you are unprofessional or emotional or have bad boundaries, but it is amazing how much power our subconscious minds have over creating our reality. For some reason that I don't understand, when we have unhealed, unresolved trauma in our subconscious, what happens is it magically recreates the same scenarios over and over and over again in some kind of grand tragic drama. It just shows up in infinitesimally small, subtle ways that we may not even be aware of, in which we interact with other people. And it creates a little game I like to call Here We Go Again. Same shit, same rodeo, same cast of characters, different costume changes. Hi mom, hi dad, how many times are we gonna do this? For example, it's common knowledge that unfortunately all too often, women who were sexually abused as young girls end up in some kind of sex work, exotic dancing or prostitution, and or they get sexually assaulted as adults. I think scientists estimate that 90 to 95% of our mind is subconscious or unconscious. There is a lot going on in the Olympic-sized swimming pool that is your subconscious mind. This stuff is deep. I bet if you take a good, hard look at the workplace bullying environments you have been in, if you are honest with yourself, you can see how you may have recreated your dysfunctional childhood family of origin. For example, let's say you grew up in a domestic violence situation. So when workplace bullies slam doors and raise their voices and even yell, that's going to be horribly triggering for you. Or let's say you were abandoned in some way. You may have literally lost someone due to death, divorce, or some other kind of separation, voluntary or involuntary, or people were around you but they didn't meet your needs, physical or emotional or both. It's like the scene in The Breakfast Club when the Emilio Estevez character asks Allison, what do they do to you? And she says, they ignore me. So now you have abandonment issues. So when you walk into the workplace, everyone's going to abandon you. You're going to be ostracized, isolated, ignored. People don't listen to you. They talk over you. They dehumanize you. Conversely, the abuse could be more like smothering and entrapment. I was raised by a mentally ill woman who did not work and who instead focused all of her energy on controlling me. Both she and my sister read my journals. That's the reason I don't journal. She went through my trash. She was always spying on me. She basically lived vicariously through me. My sister walked in on me when I was going to the bathroom. They both stole from me. Just no boundaries. So mostly what I experienced in the workplace was boundary violations. It was a bunch of stalking. These pathetic losers with no lives who were psychotically obsessed with me, eavesdropping on me, staring at me, harassing me with all of the abusive, aggressive, invasive, violating, intrusive, inappropriate, unprofessional, personal questions, going through my things, going through my food, following me around, following me to and from my car, dressing like me, copying me, following me home, driving past my place of residence, following me to the park, following me to the gym, etc. My mother was also an alcoholic, and I have had so many alcoholic bosses at this point, I have lost count. They keep showing up to work hungover with that whole puffy, beady-eyed, greasy, stringy, unwashed, uncombed look, or they come back from lunch with their vodka flask, and you could strike a match in the fumes. I was also bullied by my older sister, not a narcissist, but a bully, who colluded with my mother. And I have been bullied by the mother-sister duo so many times at this point, it's not funny. In my last full-time workplace bullying experience, I was bullied by the mother-sister duo, and then I was bullied by the president and CEO, who was a fire sign with the Sun-Venus conjunction, just like my mother. I swear the universe has a sense of humor. When I was much younger, of course, I was always bullied by people older than I was, especially women. I even had a term for that. I called it older woman syndrome. When I was in my 20s and 30s, a series of older women came in and out of my life that I called the negative role models. God help me if I ever turn out like that. Don't be like Andy, like Betsy, like Marcia, like Martha, like Ananka, like Marisa. I knew that if I did not prioritize my self-care and my mental health, if I didn't take this seriously, I was in danger. I also called some of them the mini mothers, and I could never decide if that was M-A-N-Y, like a lot, or M-I-N-I, like miniature. I was young, but I had enough wisdom to know that this was my mother, showing up in my experience over and over and over again, even long after I had moved out of her house. I am the kind of person who takes names and keeps lists. I have gone back on the websites of places that fired me to take down the names of the people who bullied me there. I keep an enemies list just like Nixon. For the sake of convenience, because there are so many of them, I used to divide my bullies into 3 categories: older women, mean girls, and dirty old men. Now, my father did not abuse me, but he was emotionally absent. And I just think it's uncanny how that dynamic perfectly reflects my dysfunctional family of origin. I was bullied more by women than by men by a ratio of about 2 to 1, because there are more women than men in my family. In the absence of any active workplace bullies, I invent them. I'm a triple Pisces, and I grew up in an abusive home where I learned to use daydreaming as an escapist coping mechanism, and I basically live in a fantasy world at this point, and I have created this whole elaborate imaginary alternate reality where I am bullied in the workplace, but always protected by an older male authority figure. That's 8-year-old little Claire, still wishing that her father would intervene on her behalf and protect her from abuse. Pathetic. I'm pushing 50 and apparently still living in my mother's house. It's like the Taylor Swift song, Right Where You Left Me. Everybody moved on, I stayed there. Right now you may be like, well, Claire, I came from a healthy family. If you are one of those very rare people who happen to have 2 loving parents in the home who were emotionally present and available and who taught you emotional literacy by asking you about your feelings, how do you feel? Well, first of all, you may have past life trauma. People think that babies are always these innocent little angels who are as pure as the driven snow, but the truth is we all come into this life carrying a lot of baggage. This may manifest as some kind of phobia. A phobia is by definition an irrational fear. You have no justification for it. You can't trace it to any detectable source or experience in this lifetime. My former psychic was like that. She had a phobia of knives. She was so deathly afraid of knives, she could not have so much as a butter knife inside her house. Then she did a past life regression, and turns out that's how she was done in a past lifetime. You may also have ancestral or generational trauma, especially if you belong to a protected class. Read a history book. Human history is nothing but war after war after war. Genocide, crusades, Inquisition, slavery, Holocaust, segregation, apartheid, violence, oppression. If Europe went for 30 years without a war, it was like, guys, come on, what are we doing? That's why, for example, when a child is adopted from a part of the world with a lot of violence and poverty, sometimes even if that child is adopted into a relatively healthy family, that child can still have a lot of problems. That's ancestral trauma. In another example, one of my university friends came from a healthy family. Now, every family has some stuff, as Tolstoy told us, but her family was healthy, functional, with 2 loving parents present inside the home who were emotionally available and literate with their children, and she had good relationships with her siblings. But for years, she always struggled with depression and eating disorders. It wasn't until she became an adult that she somehow found out that her mother had grown up in an alcoholic home. And she was like, don't you think you guys should have told me this? She was a Pisces. It's obvious that she just absorbed all of her mother's trauma. We see that one all the time. Kids taking on their parents' stuff. It's like, you know what, Mom, because I love you so much, I'm going to take all of this off of you and carry it for you as an act of service and unconditional love. Classic, 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 tale as old as time. There may be all kinds of things in your lineage that you don't even know about, that no one knows about, or your parents may have wanted to protect you, like ignorance is bliss. Again, I'm not a psychologist. I haven't had a psychology class since high school, which was over 30 years ago and which was taught by the volleyball coach. I don't have enough knowledge about psychology or spirituality to understand why we keep recreating the same trauma over and over and over again. But I can think of 2 reasons that this might be happening. One, it's all you know. It's the devil you know. You don't know any different. Why do battered spouses and abused children keep going back to the abuser? It's all they know. It's familiar. You may be literally physically addicted to the pain. There is such a thing as a pain addiction. You may be subconsciously attracted to people, situations, and things that cause you pain because they're familiar. I also haven't had a STEM class since high school, so I can't understand the neuroscience, but basically the body does not distinguish between good and bad hormones. It just wants its fix. When you experience trauma, your brain gets hits off the pain. When you're hooked, you're hooked. You may be conditioned to high levels of adrenaline and stress hormones and to using the anxiety that they create to power yourself through your day. You may be used to feeling overstimulated and on edge due to negative external reinforcement, and you may feel bored without it. You say you don't want drama, but your body does. You may not be attracted to healthy people, situations, and things that are actually good for you and may judge them as boring. There's not enough excitement to spike your parasympathetic nervous system. It's like a golden retriever boyfriend. Are you attracted to emotionally unavailable people? We see that a lot with our celebrities, especially our female celebrities. Complicated women with a lot of intelligence, education, power, success, with a lot going on, are attracted to emotionally unavailable men. That's what they like. It's a challenge and a chase. They're so used to everyone kissing their ass and fawning all over them the minute they walk in a room that it's a turnoff. They only want what they can't have. An emotionally unavailable man appears interesting, intriguing, mysterious, like a puzzle or a riddle for them to solve. It's a game. That is, until she figures out that he's not elusive and alluring. He just has the emotional intelligence of a goldfish and is so far up his own ass that he can't connect or engage with other people. Women are starting to figure out that the men that they judged as boring and stupid are actually securely attached, emotionally present, and unconditionally loving. When in doubt, go for the golden retriever. Another reason you may be recreating your dysfunctional family of origin is the psychological concept of undoing. You keep trying to do it all over again. You keep trying to do it right this time. Mommy, Daddy, please do it right this time. Please be the good father, be the good mother, be the good sibling. Please don't abandon me. Please don't ignore me. Please don't judge me. Please don't criticize me. Please treat me like a human being, not like an object. Please understand me. Please validate me. Please make me feel seen and heard. Please accept me just the way that I am. Please show up for me. And please don't hurt me. Please stop hurting me. Most people with childhood trauma work it out in their romantic relationships. That's where we see all the drama and the fireworks. It's pretty straightforward. She's wiping all of her daddy issues all over him. He's wiping all of his mommy issues all over her. And 10 years later, the lawyers are getting rich because they have too much money and too many kids. And the rest of us are clutching our pearls, popping our popcorn, sitting back and enjoying the show. When you're in the dynamic, it's impossible to see it clearly. But from an outsider's perspective, it's obvious. That's why 99% of all of the narcissism content that's out there is about romantic relationships. There are those of us who just so happen to be doing it in the workplace. A workplace is a group dynamic. Workplace bullies are very much people who are trying to get their emotional needs met inside the workplace, even in an intellectual profession. They are empty and they're trying to fill the void within. They are great big balls of lack riddled with gaps. Their auras are so full of holes, they look like Swiss cheese. They are stage 5 clingers. Their neediness is pathetic and cringe. But part of our healing from narcissistic abuse is to take radical accountability and responsibility, to own your own stuff. How have you been doing exactly the same thing? Are you going to work for reasons other than just the money? What is your motivation? Are you still looking for a family? I've said this before and I'll say it again. Everything in this life you chose, and that includes your family of origin. No matter how bad it was, it's a contract. You signed up for it. You opted in. You signed on the dotted line, and you're in it to win it, kiddo. Every time I say that, I have to block a bunch of people in the comments. I did not choose my family. Yes, you did. Spiritual law is spiritual law. You chose the lesson because you wanted to learn and grow. Most people with childhood trauma heal their pain by becoming parents themselves. You had the world's worst role model who taught you everything not to do. That's doable, but what you don't get to do is you don't get to find a surrogate. You don't get to marry your mother. That's Anna Nicole Smith. She married a significantly older man whom she literally called daddy. Then she was addicted to painkillers for about 20 years until she OD'd and died young. It doesn't work. Every time you reach outside of yourself to a false god, you only get a false self, another narcissist. Workplace bullies are empty, but you're empty too. You have lacks too. I know when you have childhood trauma, it's like, well, I got all this abuse and stuff, but what did you not get? The real lesson of a crappy childhood is not to become a parent to your own child, but to become a parent to your inner child. Be a parent to yourself. Get your needs met internally. Learn to source within, not without. Fill your own cup. Will that stop the cycle? I don't know. I've had the same pattern for almost 50 years, cutting and running like a thief in the night and ghosting everyone. I do know we have established there is no such thing as a healthy workplace, and workplace bullying never stops. In many ways, it gets worse. Maybe instead of running from the pain, we simply learn to respond to it differently. We are not 8 years old anymore. I guess the question is not, how can I make this stop? The question is, how can I stand in the face of the same trauma and not recoil inside the fetal position? The next time someone is bullying you, ridiculing you, insulting you, raising their voice at you, smearing you, giving you the silent treatment, ostracizing you, trying to sabotage you, accusing you of stuff you didn't do, whatever it is they're doing. Take a deep breath and say it with me. This is not my father. This is not my mother. This is not my brother. This is not my sister. See it very clearly for what it really is. It is not a parent. It is very much a child. This time, the roles are reversed. Workplace bullies are very much putting you in the parent position, even when you are younger than they are. If this is you, if you can recognize the ghosts of your past haunting your workplace in a copy and paste, although it may not feel like it, it's actually helpful because it sure puts things in perspective. I've also said this before, but it bears repeating. Sometimes workplace bullying is not about workplace bullying at all. It's about the pre-existing trauma you were already carrying before you set foot inside the workplace. The call is coming from inside the house, babe, which means that workplace relationships are not as important as you think they are. In astrology, work relationships are sixth house. That's a cadent house, from the Latin word for fall, which is one of the least important houses in your chart. The important houses, the angular houses, are 1, 4, 7, 10. Self, mother, marriage, career. That's the real. Family is important. Work is not family, and family is not work. Boundaries. These people don't matter. They're just holograms. I know it's cliche, but try to think of them as a bad dream. You're not going to run into any of these people in the afterlife. The only reason they exist at all is just to trigger your wounds so you wake up and realize they're still there. Time to reorient and redirect your focus, not on the workplace, but on your original wounding. I know how bad it hurts when the people who are supposed to love you the most don't love you at all. I also know it probably doesn't help, but people cannot give what they were never given. You cannot give from an empty cup. It's impossible. It's like a law of physics. The overwhelming majority of people, unless they do years of intensive therapy, end up parenting the same way they were parented. When I was a child, my mother told me a story about when she was a child. She was playing outside and she broke her wrist. She went inside to tell her mother. If your child had a broken bone, what would you do? My grandmother said to my mother, I'll take you to the hospital, but you have to finish your lunch first. My mother said she would never forget what it was, an egg salad sandwich. That story absolutely haunts me. I cannot shake this image of this tiny little girl being forced to eat with a broken arm lying on the table. Our abusers are victims too. I can see it very clearly in my chart. I have Chiron in the 7th house, the 4th from the 4th. The source of my original wounding is not my mother. It's her mother. My maternal grandmother, may she rest in peace, was a saint with me. Probably wasn't like that with my mother. My mother didn't really have a mother either. Over the years, I've softened from rage to just sadness. Throughout my childhood, my mother was always just so stressed and unhappy and unstable, just crippled by some invisible pain that neither she nor anyone around her could ever understand. She just didn't have the tools, not only to parent, but just to live life very well, because no one ever gave them to her. My mother is the reason I am a defender of women. I have been praying hardcore for my mother for a very long time, and I still love her. I do. I will always love my mother. I mean, I don't want to be in the same room with her. She likes to sick the dog on me. That's her new thing. My parents have this rescue German Shepherd that I nicknamed Abu Ghraib. Anyway, years ago, I received a letter from a friend. Y'all, I'm old. I'm Gen X. I didn't have a computer in the house until I was 25. I used to write actual physical letters on paper to my friends. I wrote this one friend about some stuff that my mother was doing, and she wrote back, "I absolutely cannot believe that you put up with that much abuse and you still love her." And then she wrote, "Claire Hunt, master lover." So my soul chose to have the mother that I did so I could learn the gift of unconditional love. And I can't think of a more beautiful thing to learn in this lifetime or any other. I hope that helps. Take care.